I called for the sheriff's resignation because the sheriff has failed. He has failed to explain how he ended up hiring this deputy sheriff who has been fired from other departments. Why haven't you met with the Masseys? It's really not that hard. They would be willing to meet. Why hasn't he met with them? I've met with them. The lieutenant governor met with them. He's done none of those things. We've waited and waited and waited, day in, day out, nothing, and now he's simply on defense.
Again, Governor J.B. Pritzker, a couple of different times yesterday, having to react to questions of him calling for Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell to resign. Campbell saying he's not going to resign. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. July 6th, we had a police-involved shooting in Springfield. A black woman, Sonya Massey, calling police in the early morning hours of a suspected prowler, and then Sangamon County Sheriff's deputies arrived, and they ended up, one of them, shooting Massey inside her home. Of course, we talked about those details, and the body camera footage is gruesome, but clearly the former sheriff's deputy was fired shortly thereafter and charged with murder, Sean Grayston. So clearly there's some questions as to his past employment record and what kind of response there is from the Sangamon County Sheriff's Department. So what kind of response should there be statewide? We had this issue go all the way up to the highest office with President Joe Biden making statements late last month. You have Vice President Kamala Harris actually having a conversation with the Massey family. You have the governor of Illinois, Governor J.B. Pritzker, saying he and the lieutenant governor both met with the Massey family. But Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell having yet to meet with them. We'll read an entire statement from the sheriff in a moment. But yesterday in Chicago at an unrelated event, Governor J.B. Pritzker was asked what kinds of state policies need to change. Is there a bill or something like that to address this entire situation? Here's the governor.
That's a little inaccurate. We had a conversation about it. There wasn't a bill. There were some ideas that were discussed when I visited with the Massey family. But let me just begin by reminding everybody of this terrible tragedy and something that never should happen anywhere in the United States, let alone in the state of Illinois or in Sangamon County, where a woman who called police to get help, asked them to protect her, was instead killed by the deputy sheriff. And if you watch the video, in a horrific fashion. And I can't get past the idea that we have to do more to protect people. We've done a lot, and I want to credit the Illinois State Police who did the investigation in a very short 10 days. That's hard to do an investigation because you've got to do a lot of interviews. It's a fulsome endeavor, and came to the state's attorney, who immediately was able to get a grand jury to file charges. So it happened in a quick fashion as it can. But it never should have happened in the first place. And I talked to one of the black elected leaders in Illinois just after it happened to get her perspective. And she shared with me, because I was so upset about it, she shared with me that even though, we haven't made enough progress, she said to me that, in years past, there never would have been an investigation. There wouldn't have been a body cam. No one would have known what really happened. And that the maybe the silver lining, if there is a silver lining in this, is that someone is being held accountable. And yet we have much more to do. So, yes, I sat with the Massey family and promised them that we would look at every avenue to determine how we might prevent this from happening to anyone ever again. And I called for the sheriff's resignation because the sheriff has failed. He has failed to explain how he ended up hiring this deputy sheriff who has been fired from other departments. He failed to put forward reforms that clearly need to be made, training and other reforms, and still has failed to meet with the Massey family. That seems to me, and I'm not saying that's a fireable offense to not meet with but that just seems outrageous to me. At a minimum, listen to them, hear them, and then hopefully take action. So that's why I called. And the lieutenant governor and I did that together, just to be clear.
So again, that's Governor J.B. Pritzker earlier in the day yesterday up in Chicago, sharing his thoughts about Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell. While those comments were being made, Campbell sent out a statement, and here's the statement. We'll read it to you in full. Statement from Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell. The Sangamon County Sheriff's Office continues to grieve for Sonya Massey and her family. While our grief cannot compare to the pain of the family, our office is trying to heal from within. All employees of the Sheriff's Office feel betrayed by one of their own. On 4 separate occasions, the sheriff says, I have requested to meet with the Massey family through intermediaries designated by the family. My requests have been rejected or not accepted. I am still willing to meet with the family, the sheriff said. The sheriff's office is willing to modify our hiring practices in order to prevent an incident like this from occurring again. However, before changes can be made, it's important to identify the problem. We have used a process that we believe was consistent with statewide standards. If these standards are deficient, we would advocate a change at all necessary levels. Campbell's office goes on to say, we're working diligently to gather all the facts in order to make intelligent decisions and to avoid making changes that are unlikely to lead to meaningful results. I agree with the governor's comments from yesterday. And again, this is Campbell's reaction to Tuesday's comments that the governor made at an unrelated event. And while the governor was making those comments here in Springfield and up in Chicago, you had Campbell release the statement. But it goes on to say, I agree with the governor's comments from yesterday, and that would be Tuesday's comments. There are still questions. I have worked tirelessly to make all the facts available to the public as swiftly and transparently as possible. I'm committed to working with our community and elected leaders to improve not only the sheriff's office, but also hiring standards on a statewide level to prevent a state agency from certifying a similar law enforcement officer 6 different times in the future. We need to unite and heal. That one responsibility is in the one responsible is in jail and will never work in law enforcement again. Calls for my resignation are nothing more than political maneuvering, Campbell says, during a tragic event and only hurts the good citizens of Sangamon County. Campbell goes on to say, I was overwhelmingly elected to lead the sheriff's office through both good times and bad. I'm fully prepared to continue leading my office and serving the residents of Sangamon County through this difficult period, ensuring we learn from this tragedy and work toward a better future. So again, that's the entirety of Sheriff Jack Campbell's comments. And that came as the governor was making comments saying that the sheriff should resign earlier in the day yesterday. But then the governor went down to Springfield here in central Illinois, the state's capital, and he was unveiling the butter cow. All right, it's the state fair time. You've got the butter cow. You've got the ribbon cutting that's going to be happening today. You've got all the agriculture enjoyment and the fair food and the concerts and the butter cow and the tractors and the livestock and the butter cow and a whole host of other things, right? And if you get a chance to come down to Springfield, you can check out the butter cow. But the governor, he, of course, after unveiling the butter cow, he was taking comments and questions from members of the media where he again was asked by a Springfield base of journalists about the Sonya Massey shooting and about getting some response to Jack Campbell's statements that were released earlier in the day. So again, here's the governor in Springfield with some comments furthering his call for Campbell to resign.
The Massey family has said, I think publicly, that they've asked for a meeting with the sheriff, and he has not been forthcoming with a meeting. Now, he says that he's offered multiple times to meet, but the Massey family will tell you they have not been offered the opportunity to meet with him. It's been a month. We should have seen already a meeting with the Massey family. If he's reached out, he hasn't done a very good job because the Massey family hasn't had the meeting that they've asked for. Second, as you know, the deputy sheriff resigned from every position, held positions for less than a year, sometimes for just a few months, 6 times resigned. And I ask the question simply, and I think people have for a month now, what did the sheriff know about his background? Why didn't he do more work on his background before hiring him? And a month has gone by. Again, a lot could have been said about that over the course of this month. And the final thing is, this isn't about politics. It's about bringing people together in Sangamon County and making people feel safe. And it's the sheriff's job to make people feel safe. And he's done the opposite of that by not answering questions, by going to a church and beginning his remarks by saying, "I'm not resigning," like as if that's the first thing people want to hear. And then there are signs that have been put up about saving him, not doing something about the murder of Sonya Massey, but about saving his political career. So I think he's the one that's played politics. It's time for him to go.
Some people may point out, where's the governor's calls for, say, the Cook County sheriff to resign because of the continued violence in Cook County, where you've got shootings on the street every weekend, every day practically, with dozens of shootings every weekend, and young children being killed in what appears to be gang violence. Obviously a lot of commentators all across the political spectrum here on this controversial issue, but the governor went on to describe the sheriffs as inept in Sangamon County because of the hiring practices. And I'll just go back to what Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell had to say here in his statement. He said they're working diligently to get all the facts in order to make intelligent decisions and to avoid making changes that are unlikely to lead to meaningful results. I agree with the governor's comments from yesterday. There are still questions, and he's worked tirelessly to make the facts available to the public, and they're willing to modify their hiring practices in order to prevent an incident like this from happening again. However, before changes can be made, it's important to identify the problem. We've used the practice we believe is consistent with statewide standards. If these standards are deficient, we would advocate for changes at all necessary levels. What about those hiring practices? Governor Pritzker being asked about that.
This isn't about state policy. The sheriff of Sangamon County can do what he thinks is the right thing to do to hire the right people to work for his department. The state shouldn't have to set policy for him to hire, to do background checks, not just background checks, but reference calls on the people that they're hiring. Look, I don't think we know what he did because he's been unwilling to tell us. So when he says he's followed some state standard, if the state has it's not the standard that each person who is in a hiring position across the state should be thinking about. They need to be thinking about the care and safety specifically of people in their county. And so I just want to know, and he's been unwilling to answer the questions. Again, if he'd been willing to do these things and act, and he's had a month, I think there would be a lot less frustration and a lot more, perhaps, a sense of safety. But none of that was done by this sheriff.
So the back and forth continues. Will there be some kind of policy decisions made at a statewide level to ensure that, the governing body of how police get certified, or however that is? I imagine we'll hear a lot more about all of this. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning for Illinois in Focus Daily. Find the podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus.